You're listening to the Bitcoin Takeover podcast, the Bitcoin podcast for OGs and intermediaries. Make sure you subscribe, leave a comment, and like this episode. Also, read the new BTC KVR magazine. This episode is sponsored by Wasabi Wallet, Crypto Steel, Shop in a Bit, and Sadodime. Thank you for listening.
And then he's going to start data as an artistic
thing?
element.
I mean, do you want us
oh,
to
we're
be
recording already?
On camera, or is
this live?
No.
I mean,
Hello there and welcome to the Bitcoin Takeover podcast. This is season 14 and I'm here with Lisa Neigut, better known as Nifty Nay, the creator of Base 58, which is a very interesting gathering that generates events and lots of movements in the Bitcoin community. And to the far left, no pun intended, is Calle. And he's the creator of Cashu, which is a Chaumian and Ecash system on top of the Lightning Network. It's a pretty cool anonymization system, which allows you, for example, if you're using a custodial Lightning wallet, to benefit from greater privacy. And we are here today at the Parallel Police Hackers Congress, HCPP, the 2023 edition. And we are privileged enough to be using their studio, which is soundproofed, has these beautiful but dirty drapes. I should have cleaned them before we started. I hope it's not on video. Anyway, I gotta thank them for letting us use the studio and inviting us to join this beautiful event, which was a 3-day event. It just wrapped up. This is the last day. It's almost 11 p.m. I guess we're not tired because we're excited about what has been happening. And I'm talking too much by myself. So I'm going to pass the microphone to Lisa, so she introduces herself and tell us more about Base 58. And then you can do, Calle, your own part about Cashu.
Cool. Oh, I'm talking first. Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa. Am I talking about Base 58 stuff? Great. Or my jacket. Okay, yeah. So I have to. I look like a business lady, and this is like an informal podcast, right? So hang on here. I gotta wait.
Fantastic.
Cool. Okay. All right. Is that my intro? I'm not a business lady. No, I run Base 58, which is the world's best Bitcoin protocol school. We have classes on beginning Bitcoin transactions all the way up to Taproot and Lightning. I also run a Bitcoin technical conference series called Bitcoin Plus. We're doing our 4th ever conference, first time in Europe, in Berlin next week. Callie's going to be there. I'm going to be there. We're going to be talking about Nix Bitcoin. I laugh about it because it's like Nix means German for nothing. So like if you translate it, we're talking about nothing Bitcoin.
Nix Bitcoin, Alter.
Yeah. That's what I do.
Cool. Hey. So I'm Calle. I work on several stuff on Lightning, for example, on LM-Bits. And I'm working on Cashu, which is a Chaumian Ecash system. And I had a workshop here at HCPP on Cashu where people joined. And so it's happy to be here with a privacy-preserving project that is being, preserved well received from the community like HCPP, which cares about privacy and anonymity. So I'm super happy to be here and part of your podcast.
What about you, Lisa? What did you present or what did you do here at HCPP?
I was here at HCPP to hang out with all the privacy conscious people, really curious about what was going on kind of in the privacy space. So I'm just kind of hanging out here having fun. I kind of was joking that this is my vacation because it's like not a Bitcoin conference, and then immediately came in and there's like Bitcoin signs all over the walls everywhere. So I don't know if I can still say I was not a Bitcoin conference. I mean, it's clearly more. We really don't talk about. People weren't actually talking about Bitcoin at the in the talks and stuff, but there's so many Bitcoiners here, which I think is such a great testament to how important privacy is to like the Bitcoin ecosystem and the people that are building in it. So that's like, I mean, guys, that's really cool. I think like as Bitcoiners, we don't appreciate how much our participation in the privacy space like important, like both for Bitcoin because we get to learn about all the cool new stuff happening in privacy and bring that back into the Bitcoin community, you know, at the level of like the builders and hackers in this space. So that's
it
cool.
also gives you the sense of how Bitcoin is embedded in a larger project that is, you know, consists of art or people that explore cyborgs or anonymity or different ways of living, different forms of living. So there have been so many different styles of talks here that all are somehow part of one bigger spirit, and you can see how Bitcoin is also part and came from that bigger spirit. So it's really nice to see Bitcoin as a part of something larger, actually. Yes.
Yeah, basically we had cypherpunks, we had biohackers, we had regular hackers who created devices. We also saw presentations by Linux guys, and I saw you, Lisa, that you are about to attend that one. That's about the time when I told you today that we should shoot an interview, and you told me, yeah, let me just attend this one presentation. What was it like? Did you enjoy it? Was it different from what you usually get from Bitcoin conferences?
Yeah, it was definitely different. So he's not. This is like where I get a little confused about the free software movement's relationship to Linux. But it was Richard Stallman, who's famous for his long time advocacy of free software and the free software movement. He was part of a big project. My understanding of this, again, it's a little fuzzy, but he was involved with GNU project, which was, I think, I don't actually know what those acronyms stand for. And with it, like the way he was talking about it today, he paired up with Linus Torvald, who was building Linux, and together they made like one of the first free operating system options. I think that's what. I think that's kind of what the project was around. So yeah, he was like a really big advocate of the importance of free software, and it was really cool, I think, to listen to him talk about like what are the 4 values, or like what makes software free was like that. And I'm gonna get embarrassed because I don't remember what the actual 4 were. I just remember there were 4 of them. I think the first one is like users have to be able to run the software, like actually execute the binaries, which I thought was kind of interesting. So, and then like I think one of the other ones was like the users have to be able to read the source code. Maybe they have to be able to build it for themselves. And then I don't know what the 4th one is, but basically you need to be able to be self-sovereign with software in order for that to be actually, okay, sorry. I mean, I can read it. Vlad found the definition of GNU, so that's GNU. Like number go up, except not exactly. It's GNU, and it stands for, it's a recursive algorithm, which was like a super cool thing to do with software names in like the 90s. It stands for GNU, like GNU's not Unix. The G isn't actually mean anything.
Well, it refers to itself.
I don't know. I can't read out loud. Read out loud. Wait, where does it come from? I don't understand. It was a link. A song. Oh, so apparently Stallman chose the name by using various plays on words, including the song The GNU.
The GNU.
Which is a humorous song talking about GNU by Flanders and Swan. I don't know what any of this means. What is a GNU? A wildebeest. Oh, so it's actually like an object, a thing. It's not just an acronym.
What I found interesting about him, he was really making a point about the difference between open source and free software. Do you really understand that? I have a limited understanding of it, because I mean, it seems like for software to be free, you need to be fully sovereign in the entire stack of operation, in running the software, in being able to change software, and being simply open source doesn't adhere to all of these conditions, right?
Yeah, that was his point. You could publish, so like the first like of his 4 principles is you need to be able to run it. Someone can publish the source code and not publish what you need in order to be able to build it and make it for yourself. So like just because you can read the source code, if there isn't all these other things like being able to run it for yourself, for example, or being able to like build it for yourself,
or flash it yourself onto the device that you're running on.
Exactly. Then it's not actually free software. So like, yeah, so most open source software, I think basically all free software has to be open source, right? Because that's part of the definition of being free, is that it is an open source. But it's like, if you kind of think of it as like there were 4 things you needed to be like free software, being open source is only one of those 4, right? So you like get one of the criteria, but you don't get all of them. Stallman might disagree with that, but I'm going to stick with that one, that definition. He has like, I feel like there were a lot of things he's like really been thinking about and kind of having the same conversation about for literally 30 years now, right? Like I think he got started in the 90s, right? Like the free software moment was like a 90s era thing, which is crazy to think about because I always think of it as being like a 70s era thing. But to hear that it came out in the 90s, it's like, wow, that's like, it's a lot more recent than I would think, right? Like 30 years ago is a long time in software years, but it's not like 50 years in the past, you know?
During our lifetimes.
Yeah, it's during our lifetimes. And I think to me, like when I started getting into computer stuff in like 2010, 2011, I didn't really, like anything that came before me, like is like ancient history, you know? You're like, no, this happened like everything happened in the 70s. I don't know. I mean, I know that's not totally true, but anyways.
I wonder how it must feel like to be one of the behemoths of the time, and looking back to all of what happened since that time, because we majorly fucked up. I think the amount of fuck up is much larger than the things that we have achieved, and I look at that as a state of fact because I've been born into that era, so to speak. But as someone who's been fighting the fight for so long, it must be even more devastating in a sense. Or maybe it's not. Maybe I'm just having a bad look at it. But yeah.
There's a couple of ways I look at it. Like one is it's recent enough that he's still alive, right? Like he's been around and he's still alive, and he's still around, and he's still saying the same things, right? Like he's been saying for the last 30 years. So like this conversation we had with him here today really felt like a conversation he have been having for decades, right? And that's kind of interesting that he's still like up saying the same things. The other way I saw his like appearance like here at this conference is like, this is the audience he wanted to tell his message to this year. You know what I mean? Like he's been doing this for 30 or 40 years. He only gets to go see so many conferences or so many audiences. Like at the same time, there's only so much demand for his time, right? For that kind of like content or conversation. And this audience, the people here at HTPP, were both the ones that would want to hear from him, right? And hear what he has to say still 30 years after he like first started saying it. And then we're also the ones he would want to come say it to, which I think is cool, because I think it's a strong statement again about the kind of people that are here and like the sort of like joint community that we're all a part of. Like, you know, he knows that this is like the people that he needs to tell the message to or remind of, because this is the generation or like the set of people that are going to carry those same things forward, you know, for like the next 30 years or whatever, hopefully, through whatever software we're like building now. So I don't know, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is really cool that we're having this conversation, especially in a time where the name open source is being used by licenses that are not really open source. And we have at least 2 projects in Bitcoin that pretend to be open source, but they use a license that's actually source available or source viewable. You can see it, but you cannot use it for certain purposes. Yeah, and that's not really open source.
If you want to be even more pedantic and say how much of the software you're using in the Bitcoin stack is free software, not only open source software, it becomes even worse. It can be fully open source, but can can you run the Lightning node on your wallet, on your phone, if you cannot run on LSP, for example? So the infrastructure sometimes is closed while the wallet is open source, for example. So we're building systems that are composed of multiple parts that rely on each other, and not all of them are being treated equally in the sense of sharing the resources to run them, because also there are, I guess, points in these products where you can produce profit, which makes it even less likely to freely open and share these resources with the world. However, this sounds bleak. The situation is better than this might sound in Bitcoin, I think, because we are actually seeing companies like Breeze and Blocktank working on LSP standards, which is a highly competitive field, but still there is effort to democratize the resources such that everyone can join basically and provide the service, which is also inherently important for the evolution of the Lightning network itself, that we distribute the topology of the network and not rely so much on very few, very large players. Right? So to summarize, I think free software, from the free software lens, I think not all of Bitcoin would qualify. And there's different flavors of open source that you were alluding to. I guess, yeah, there's much to discuss.
Oh, it's funny. I work on I worked for on Core Lightning for a really long time. And I feel like Core Lightning is one of the more on the I feel like we're definitely free software. There's no question about we want people to be able to run it, build it, and use it. Except if you're on Windows. No, which I guess that's not really a free software platform. So why do we care if you can't run it on Windows? Anyways, but yeah, it's.
What about Greenlight? Actually, just a question. I'm curious. If I'm not sure, maybe it's wrong what I heard. But can I run a Greenlight server?
Oh, I don't think you can. I don't even know what I don't think I've ever seen
or Liquid up until
if that makes sense.
Liquid up until 4 or 5 months.
Yeah, Liquid, I think they just open sourced a lot of it. This is where it's I haven't really been keeping track of other projects, I guess, is what I was going to say after that. I know that the projects I work on and where they fall, but I could not tell you what license any other project in Bitcoin is using, if that makes sense. I think I knew that Greenlight wasn't open sourced. It's not open sourced, I don't think. I hope I don't get in trouble. Someone's going to be at least that's right here. Or yeah. But I don't think the Greenlight stuff is open source.
There's clearly demand for something like Greenlight to be open source. And I think people are also tackling that. It's clearly something revolutionary that other people will want to run as well. So
yeah, open sourcing it might actually be a really good thing for the Blockstream project as well, because we'll start getting more people contributing and building on it and making what we're making even better, right? Blockstream doesn't have a lot of engineers working on it. If we can get more of the community helping us build the best in class one, it'd be good for everyone, right?
Well, I think Bitcoin is not large enough yet to monopolize a certain piece of the market. I'm not saying that they're trying to monopolize, just to make an example. I think Bitcoin itself is too small to monopolize a certain niche of the market. We should rather think of how can we scale this as fast as possible so that we can actually serve a lot of people, so that we can actually scale. So I guess, what I'm trying to say is that maybe 10,000 users, couple 100,000 users that might use such a system are not going to be, not going to change the world. Whereas I would want to see that millions of people could use these systems, and then I would prefer more distributed load, that individual smaller entities run these systems, right? Instead of one large big fat company, for example.
Yeah, and I think one of the things with one big large company is I think that to a certain extent we as organizations or companies or whatever get into this I think there's this lie we believe that by not sharing that means that our customer base will be the only option for our customer base or for the potential customer base, right? But I think one thing that's actually kind of true is that markets around the world are super segmented, and like people might not ever hear about what you're doing because they don't speak your language. They're not on the same like communication channels you're able to get messages out on. Like in a world that's even more fractured, like would actually be better for the world if there was like somewhere in like the Middle East, like a company or a startup in the Middle East or in India or in like sub-Saharan Africa that has a different market that you were literally never going to reach. You know what I mean? We like to think that because the World Wide Web is international, that when you ship an app that like reaches the world, that it's just magically going to get into every other market and distribution center that exists in the world. But that's really like, and I mean, people have been building companies forever, but that's so not the case.
It's very interesting how Bitcoin spreads around the globe, right?
But Bitcoin spreads around the globe. Right.
Yeah, but not homogeneously. Sometimes you need to know where you need to be, probably. I think I'm thinking about companies like IBEX, Mercado, or Blink, Calle, who have positioned themselves uniquely in South America, which sounds, different than most startup stories might start, right? But they clearly found a niche because there is adoption going on there. So Bitcoin is actually expanding its user base based on locational factors. So companies that know that, they can profit from that resource. It's very interesting.
Yeah, but I think like by not open sourcing your software, then like if you're the company and you're building it for commercial purposes, or like trying to like build a service that only you're doing and so people will come use you or whatever, like that's your advantage of having the closed source, right? Is that no one can try to copy what you're doing and try to compete with you. But that's like, I think it's like thinking that they're going to compete directly with you, I think is ignoring this reality that your business reaches only so far. And that by not letting other little places that you really were never going to reach anyway, get your software and start replicating it, then yeah, we are holding back, I think, like you're saying, the entire ecosystem, the ecosystem being this like global thing, right? Because like you're saying, Bitcoin is everywhere and it's in every market, and it's like actually reached into places that most businesses never even imagined that their service could reach. Anyways.
Well, building blocks will always be more efficient, and we see that with LNBits, for example. The way people use it is beautiful. LNBits is kind of this big, complex machine that can do so many things, and communities start integrating it into their own, they build their wallets, their bolt cards, give it a certain custom style and make it look like their own website. So a software that can be molded into what you need it to be, if you know how the code looks like, how you need to deploy it, can really sparkle in a different form, in a different group, and fulfilling different needs, which is still what we need to explore. I think in Bitcoin we need to explore all the possibilities, and one deployment from one company with one vision about how this technology should be used is certainly not going to cover all the different possibilities that we need to still explore.
Yeah.
Well, hi Vlad. This is your podcast.
Yeah, I very much appreciate the way in which you made me useless for a few minutes, but the conversation was so good. And I enjoyed listening to it. And I'm happy that I get to host this on my show, because I'm not sure if these opinions are being voiced too much. And generally, you can turn your back on the camera if you want to drink water. Anyway, generally, there tends to be an overly optimistic sentiment on Bitcoin podcasts. They're trying to always present the bullish sentiment and the bullish argument and try to hide from the arguments. No, I don't want water. Hide from the stuff that doesn't look so great, and the fact that we ended up relying too much on AWS infrastructure is making me want to buy Amazon stocks now.
How much is it? How much Lightning liquidity is on AWS plus Google?
A lot of it.
I think 60 or something.
We can verify.
I think it's around 60. Yeah, it's
we are
a number. So,
people of facts, and we enjoy checking out information.
Can tell you that. Yeah.
I was going to say, well, my personal infrastructure is like not hosted in a data center, but the IP address that it represents at is at a data center.
This is I often hear that, and that's absolutely true. There are IP addresses that look like they come from this IP space, but do you really think that's significant?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
Really?
No.
I also think
No, I don't think so.
Okay, let's see.
I mean, I hope that I'm wrong, but I, in my heart of hearts, know that I'm not.
So top 100 ISPs hosting Lightning nodes, and we have about 50%. Amazon plus Google is around 50% of the capacity of Lightning nodes of known Lightning node capacity, and then we have DigitalOcean, Hetzner, DataWeb, and LunaNode, and then we've covered around 75% of the entire capacity of the network.
I'm such a weirdo, and I'm looking at these node capacity numbers, and they're large. It's it's kind of amazing how much. Okay, but I guess what I get excited about looking at this, I know we're talking about how much is kind of concentrated on these IP addresses or these hosting things, but guys, I think it's I think it's pretty cool that there's a bunch of companies on here, this is actually it's not all at one company. I guess I'm saying the Lightning Network isn't all in one place, and it's not a lot of other layer 2s, which are literally one company is running it, right? So it's not even let me look at the different data centers.
Absolutely. And this is also not Bitcoin's fault. This is the fault of the internet.
But
everything
I think I
like
still
this.
see a bunch of diversity here is what I'm saying. It's there are a lot on in terms of numbers of Bitcoin. There is a bunch. There's almost half. No, it's not even half though. It's
half of it is
Amazon only has
Google.
30%.
Plus Google,
yeah, but Google's a total different corporation. I mean, yes, two corporations added together are
two
50.
Jokes,
But
two trolls to choke.
Okay.
Okay, that's the optimistic view. I can live with that. But any software projects hosting distribution, if you host it, probably you will see these statistics similar probably in how that's what the internet looks like. This is probably the same statistics basically.
Yeah, but I mean, it might even be better than most of the internet.
I mean,
which is cool.
But I think it's more concerning with Bitcoin than with the general internet. It's maybe okay that Amazon can turn off Facebook, and who cares? They're probably running it themselves. But I mean, this would be could be critical for some applications, and so you have to also think about diversity in other web services. But in case of Lightning, you can literally cripple the system by turning these IP addresses off, for example.
That's true.
Just filter through the port. It's a very simple switch. Like in China, you can click it off probably.
Yeah, but even if the biggest one of those was 30%, right? So at most, if Amazon wanted to turn it all off, we'd only lose 30% of the network. That's less than 50. I'm so excited that there's not a majority choke. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah.
It might be not in. I'm way too
okay.
excited.
We know.
about this.
I think this fits in the last.
So it might as well be 1% of the network, but if that's your liquidity and that's your infrastructure in which you're relying to use your Bitcoin, then it's still bad. So it's good that we still have the option to run a node in our own homes and do that with great sovereignty. But at the same time, I feel sad that we have been discouraging home nodes from being deployed because they're slow, because they don't provide reliability. I blame this usually, I think it's a consequence of VC money pouring in, and VCs want to create business models, and since you can't deploy tokens, they're like, how about we centralize Lightning more so that you get these LSPs that collect most of the transaction fees, and we discourage home nodes from even participating, and we're gonna tell them, well, you should not because it's a bad user experience, it's hard, you need to rebalance channels, you're not gonna make much money from routing fees, but this is the price that we pay for decentralization, I think. The fact that you get to do this and you get to connect with whomever you want.
Well, I think it's most important that you have the option to do that, right? It might not always be the best way to do what you want to do. You will never be a good routing node if you're a Raspberry Pi. You can be a mediocre routing node, but at some point it just things won't work the way they should, and that is not only true for the hardware, the internet reliability at home, and so on and so forth. Lightning is a protocol where you're required to be online all the time, and But I think the fact that you can do it, I've been doing it myself. I think I can say that because I said it before, but no, I won't say it. Sorry, I just decided to to walk back on that. Yeah, that's it. The fact that you can run it is important. That's what I'm trying to say.
It's super important, right? And it's a big part of, I think, what we're hoping, at least the Bitcoin project results in, is like people actually running nodes and services at home, right? Like Bitcoin relies on that, I think.
But I still use my Phoenix wallet every day, and I use an LSP hosted by another company that I cannot run myself. The LSP is not open, as far as I know, at least. And the home node at home won't ever be able to fulfill the needs that I have for a daily Lightning wallet, and that's unfortunately the fact. I mean, maybe for payments into a certain direction it will work, but it turns out that Lightning works much better if you have a lot of channels and a lot of capacity. So in that sense, I think if Lightning is going to be around for a couple of decades, I see it more as a high bandwidth highway of liquidity between larger things, and I don't think that, at least if we don't find something that we haven't discovered yet, I don't see how we will have regular Lightning, everyone running a couple of nodes and using it for the entire world. It can stay in this form, in its niche, still infant shape, but Lightning can never scale to the globe. And the fact that it's so hard to run a node that you cannot run it today with so much software that we have built on a Raspberry Pi without relying on third-party software like Phoenix, which is, again, a centralization force to make everything more efficient, as you said.
Wasabi Wallet is unfairly private. It's the most advanced and most used Bitcoin privacy wallet with 500,000 downloads across Windows, Mac OS, and Linux, as well as thousands of fresh new Bitcoins getting mixed every month. Wasabi makes use of the new generation Wabi Sabi engine to create mega coin joins, thus mixing your Bitcoins with those of hundreds of other users. For amounts lower than 0.01 BTC and remixes, you pay no coordination fee. Even if you don't use CoinJoins, Wasabi Wallet has a native Tor integration and downloads block filters to help you keep your network level and public key privacy. Download Wasabi Wallet for free today at wasabiwallet.io and experience the future of Bitcoin privacy.
I'm pretty bleak on that. What do you think?
What do I think about Lightning?
Lightning, like the pleb application of Lightning, a Raspberry Pi at your home, and that's the way you use Lightning in 10 years.
So I think the thing about running a node at home is that personally, it's me forgetting how wealthy America is, because to a large extent, the understanding that you can get a computer at home and connect it to the internet and have Bitcoin to put on it. I was going to say Bitcoin is like, I feel like Bitcoin is the most exciting project in the home server industry in decades.
100%.
It's so fucking exciting. Sorry, I'm getting a little off topic, but I just want to be it's so exciting.
No, let's go there.
It is so exciting that money was the thing. They convinced people that they need a fucking server at home to take care of their personal serving, serving needs.
The amount of care you put into it suddenly, and the amount of precision that people try to learn about it, how to do it correctly,
how to run a server for themselves.
Yes.
I guess what I'm because Stallman being here kind of started pulling back ancient memories of what the free software movement kicked off, but then was also something in the water when I was starting to get into engineering or computer programming in 2010 or so, and a little before that. Hackers wanted people to run computers at home. They wanted people to run their own web servers was the first thing, right? It was all about people are going to get computers and they're going to get them in their homes and they're going to run their own web server.
And mail server.
And mail server. Yeah. It was, you're going to have your own mail. Like, this was the vision, right? And that was part of the free software vision was that everyone would have a computer at home, and on that computer, they would run their own web server.
And everyone would have their own IP.
And everyone would have their own IP.
That would point to your home.
Everyone would be like peer-to-peer. It would be a real peer-to-peer internet. And you would be self-sovereign on the internet. And this would be everyone, and this would be normal, and this would be the way that the web was like envisioned at first, right? No one envisioned Google. No one envisioned Amazon Web Services. No one envisioned like these software as a service-y things that you have to like go see. It was like all going to be like peer-to-peer. Like,
but you cannot build a web peer-to-peer, right? It doesn't work. I mean, we would have done it.
Well, I think the real thing is there was no incentive, incentive thinking. Like there was no incentive to make people run their servers at home. Like I would much rather use MySpace, right? This is kind of where MySpace and Facebook came from.
Okay.
Is because people wanted their own personal web page, but they didn't want to have to run a server because they didn't know how, or they didn't like have a computer they could run a server
on. So the
on.
reason to run a Bitcoin node is not only because you're an interested person in a specific I don't know, you're maybe interested in privacy, that's why you run a Tor relay or something like that, but you actually want to serve yourself, and you participate in the network only by running a decentralized node.
Yes,
that's the way to use it.
But people want to have their own money. People want to be, some people, not everyone, but I think people want to be their own bank more than they want to be their own web server. I think is my point.
100%.
Like I think money was the thing that is gonna get that like hacker dream. I feel bad saying hacker, it doesn't feel right, but like that like cyberpunk dream. Maybe it's a cyberpunk dream that everyone would run servers at home for their things, and like, but it wasn't web servers, it wasn't email, which is kind of funny to think that we would think that it would be email, right? Like it's amusing that it's like, oh yeah, everyone's gonna want to like be their own message relay, like.
Well, that's why you don't build peer-to-peer systems
yeah.
like that. This is clearly not the best way of doing it.
Well, yeah, but that was for every other use case, like every other service except money. It turns out people want to be able to put their money under the mattress. Who knew? I mean, we knew this, right? Absolutely. People want to be able to take their gold bars and keep them at home. Like we finally, as like cyberpunks, figured out the goddamn thing that will make people run their own software servers, which is kind of cool. Like we're living. I think this is sort of like. I think like Bitcoin is really exciting for the cypherpunk movement, which I feel like the conference we're at here is like sort of a continued embodied of, right? And Bitcoin is important to that movement as well, I think is what I'm trying to say, in a bigger sense than I think most of us have really realized or thought through. And that's that like Bitcoin is a big part of this community here at HCPP because we're on the forefront of this new wave of self-sovereignty, which is running your own servers at home. And like, we've got some really cool partners in this fight of getting people to run their own software and be self-sovereign. I was going to say, they're not here, but one of them I think is Tailscale. I think Tailscale is like a really huge, like weird partner in this like ability to get people. It's
amazing. Check it out if you don't know it. Like, Tailscale, set up your own VPN. Everything just works.
Yeah, it just works, and it's got a user-friendly interface, and it's like so easy to set up, and it like. I get really excited. I'm clearly passionate because because it just makes it easy.
So, what do you think of Umbrel?
I think Umbrel is like. Yes, Umbrel is a huge part of this movement also.
The number of nodes exploded because of them. Like maybe I misinterpreted, but like the number of servers running in people's houses is because of this project has just exploded.
But it's not open source and it's not free software.
Yes, true.
That's correct. Yes.
And that's unfortunate because it isn't really related to its success. I think they're not successful because they are like that, and it would have been better if they were.
Sorry, what I said because I don't know.
Oh. Yeah, sorry.
I stated basically that Umbrel is not open source and is not free software, and you were reacting to that.
Do you think their success has anything to do with the fact that they're not open and not free software?
It's like a game of musical chairs that were like permutations or whatever that we're playing with microphones. Anyway, if I believe that their success is owed to the fact that they're not free software, well, their license does not allow people to fork and deploy commercially anything. So it's sort of a commercial license, and it gave them enough time to develop before the competition can keep up. So in a sense, it's almost as if they applied a patent. You can check out the source code, but at the same time, you can't use it. And it's not free software. Maybe partially their success is owed to this, but most of it is just the user interface and the friendliness of the software, because anyone who owns a Raspberry Pi or any computer whatsoever, and pretty much every computer that was released in the last 10 years, and I mean a laptop or a desktop, is more powerful than the Raspberry Pi, and you can run Umbrel on top of it. It's not my favorite software to run. I think I would rather recommend RaspiBlitz or MyNode or Nodl or whatever. But Umbrel has that Apple-styled user experience where everything looks nice. You download apps. You can have pretty much everything. I should also mention in this enumeration the Start9 Labs Embassy OS, which I think is incredible and doesn't make some of the compromises that Umbrel makes, but is also not free as far as I'm aware, unless you build it from source or something. But yeah, there are alternatives out there. There's Umbrel, which I think is incredible for what it offers, but it comes with the trade-off that it's not open source and it's not free software. But you can use it without paying, and that's a different, I guess, distinction that we should have made when we define what free software is.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe that was the fourth thing I can't remember.
Good point. Free doesn't mean gratis. Okay, well, I mean, Umbrel should definitely free their software. Umbrel, if you're listening, free your software. People are not going to copy it and make money with a copy of Umbrel. You're going to be as successful as you are already because you've done an incredible job, but you should still free your software so that people can verify it and run it and modify it to their own needs, because software wants to be free.
I wonder how many responses we're gonna get to this. It's just people being like, "Wait, our software's already open and free, and here's the it's kind of wondering how many of these maybe I'm sure in the case of Umbrel, you guys probably know that it's not open source because you've looked for it. A lot of these I just feel like I haven't ever gone and looked for, so I'm like, someone's gonna come out and be like, wait, we're actually open. It'll be great. But the other thought I had when I was I'm sort of meta conversationing, but the other thing I was thinking about is how funny it would be if we started a talk show where we just get on every week and we have a list of it was we're making demands on a video, Umbrel, your software is not free yet. This is your opportunity to
We're gonna call it Bitcoin Karens.
I mean, just name and shame.
The blame game.
Yeah, just name and shame. I don't know if that.
No, we're talking
anything,
about our ecosystem, and the reason why we talked about Umbrel is because we like that, right? They exploded on the number of nodes. That's where we started with.
We're
and
impressed at their success and adoption. Yeah,
it has been an incredible job, and I hope also the number of nodes is sustainable so that people still keep it running. I do hope so. I have the impression that there was excitement about running your own node, let's say a year ago or something, where really big groups of people started, people teaching each other how Lightning channels work, trading liquidity, building the first markets that were started on Telegram, where people are pushing liquidity around in circles. So that's been pretty cypherpunk to witness. Really, self-organizing people building crappy HTML pages to figure out who pays whom in a Lightning route when they open a Ring of Fire, and building bots to register your node and then being automatically selected for the next. It's crazy what people have been building, and I hope those times are still around, but it still also feels a bit like things have been cooling off and Lightning channels have been closing down, and people are complaining about forced closes. We're really in such the winter also in terms of how Lightning has been expanding, I think, in the last couple of months.
I very much like where this conversation is going, and I'm happy that we were able to present some not necessarily negative but critical points about Lightning. But I want to ask you, since this is a bear market and we like taking shots at stuff and being angry at people who under-delivered or did not perform according to our current expectations, there have been some proposals for Bitcoin regarding layer 2s. There is Ark by Burak. I had him on my show before, that other famous podcaster, but didn't take the credit for it. Anyway, so there's Ark, and there's also Drivechains. I've had about 8 hours of interviews with Paul Stortz trying to understand what that's about and trying to get him to provide straight answers. What do you think about these proposals, and to which extent they are better or worse than Lightning?
Should we start with Ark? Just talk about
Yeah, we can talk about Ark. If you think Lightning is centralizing, wait until you see Ark.
Yes. How many Arks can the network sustain in
I think
the
it's
parameterization
256, you
that
know.
they gave?
One
Who's going to
byte's
be
worth.
that? Maybe
One
2
byte's
slots
worth.
for Coinbase.
No, 1 slot for Nifty,
Binance?
one
Okay.
slot for Calle,
I'll take it.
maybe
I'll
one
take
for
it.
Vlad if he wants it. Yeah, okay.
Can I
we've
sell my slot later? Yeah.
Why don't we
probably.
just take 2 slots each? Then we've
Okay,
got one to
okay.
sell.
So
You want
this
2?
is-
We've
this
got
is
2. Okay, so that's 6.
how the Ark.
I can make an NFT of a slot so I can sell an extra one.
Yeah, we could get slot medallion, like medallion, like in the taxi system in New York City. There were only so many taxis, and they'd sell the medallions for them. They're like worth $1 million each. So okay, so we're starting the Ark ASP, the Ark service provider.
Your neighborhood Ark.
Your neighborhood Ark. We're gonna start we're starting a, what do you call it, like a cartel. Like ASP cartel. You can only run one if you have one of the like NFT medallions for it. Anyways.
We put up a bunch of Bitcoin.
Yeah, the liquidity requirement on Ark, I understand. Oh, sorry, we're getting really into the technical. I hope that's fine. The liquidity requirements are 2x the transaction volume, is my understanding, right? So whatever
Yeah, I
the
think so.
throughput is, you need at least. So if you wanted to move like a Bitcoin on Ark, you would need 2 Bitcoin.
Oh, why 2? I didn't get that. I don't get that. Like as far as I understand, so you have the system in Ark. When I want to make a transaction, I create this virtual output thingy, but to anchor that, the ASP has to put up the Bitcoin for the transaction so that you can receive it in the next round. So to speak,
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
So
you need the Bitcoin that's incoming, so to speak, like arriving to Ark. In order to make the payment work, you're going to send money to Ark, and then Ark is going to have money already available to send to me. So they get your Bitcoin going in counts as 1, and then the Bitcoin Ark already had that they're about to send me counts as 2. So that the system needs to be like double capitalized to be effective. So for every 100 Bitcoin that wants to move through the system, you need 200 Bitcoin in the system total.
So it requires a lot of capital. It requires a lot of block space because it should also introduce some interactivity, like less interactivity. You don't want the receiver to remain online until each round is finished. So first proposals or ideas were like 5-second rounds or something like that. You fill up the blockchain quite quickly, but I think
gets
like
expensive.
you cannot bootstrap it because it's going to be extremely expensive for the first couple of people who want to use it, because the burden, the fees will be quite high when you first start it. But once it reaches an enormous amount of use, maybe not enormous, let's say just very large, because I don't know the number, it is supposed to become a lot more efficient than doing ordinary on-chain transactions, and that's the actual idea of Ark, right?
Yeah, but it's like we're trying to build like a jet plane, and it's like, you know how many millions you have to invest in, like hours of man work and years that you have to invest to get like a jet plane made, you know? Like it's not like you can build the bike. Like sometimes when you're building startups, you have to like build the skateboard, and then you build the scooter, and then you build the bicycle, and then you build the like horse carriage drawn wagon, and then you like, I don't know what game, like then you get a car. It seems like a big jump between those, but you know what I mean? Like that, like you kind of like iterate towards like success, or like, you know, Lightning started with 1 channel, and then there were 2, and then there were 10, and then there were 100, and then there were like 1,000, you know, like it had this ability to like bootstrap itself. Sounds like Ark that's going to be hard. And so my answer is like, oh, so you mean like Ark won't work unless they get like VC money so that they can like subsidize. So like the VC money goes into, you need something like VC money, like a large amount of capital to bootstrap that kind of system, because you need to subsidize the first, like, I don't know, 10 million transactions, right? Or however, until you like build up enough users through like free, cheap Bitcoin transactions till you get to the point where you can, there's enough volume moving through that then you can start charging people for the actual fees that it takes, plus, you know, a service fee, because why not? We're rebuilding, can't do everything for free. This isn't a charity, right? But what do you call it? You need, anyways, basically this won't work without like a lot of VC money.
And it's going to be like one big fucking server that everyone connects to, and it's like, please include my VTXO in the next data update.
Yeah, I mean, we thought AWS going down was bad with that. This will be like one server, you set it off. It's like that whole thing.
I mean, for example, Wasabi coin joins, right? It's also one big server that everyone connects to, and you could say like, this is not decentralized. Like, why this is not okay, because everyone should be able to run it. Apparently, you can actually run it. I didn't verify it myself, but you can run this thing. I guess not so many people do it. I haven't heard many people actually doing it, but you can do it, because you don't need enormous capital and enormous resources to be able to run it.
Right.
With Ark, you cannot enter the game. You need to be
it's
on
a
the
fat
level
cat
of,
game.
Yes.
It's a fat cat game. Wow. Okay.
So maybe.
Well, like you gotta have. Oh, in the US, it's like a really wealthy guy, like that has just like bags of money. And it's like, those are like the fat cats, you know? They're like, the fat cats are the ones that like got all, like, they're well fed and like tons of resources to throw at something. Yeah. Oh man. So I guess like if Ark actually does come to Bitcoin, that's I feel like that's a sign of like the fact that big capital wants to bet on Bitcoin transactions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting. So it actually, like, it might be some version of bullish for Bitcoin, that someone is willing to bet that big on Bitcoin transactions going to Sonic Jet levels, right? Because, like, I don't think we're at Sonic Jet levels currently. You know what I mean? Someone has to bet on us growing into Sonic Jet levels of Bitcoin transactions.
Should we accept? Should we be wary if companies propose new layer solutions, just generally, not connected to Ark? Ark is not a company, I don't want to make that connection, but we were just talking about capital required to be able to run something like that. Do you think when we have Ark is not, Ark needs CTV to work, and we're also going to talk about probably another proposal that also needs a change to Bitcoin to work. And having these proposals, proposing systems that are led by interests of a company already that might position itself in the early beginnings of this layered protocol, that sounds Ethereum-y to me as well. This is not how Lightning started, for example. Lightning is literally, don't touch it, don't run it. Like if you want to run it, you're crazy, then flip this switch, right?
It was reckless, yeah. It was like reckless.
And then people did it because, whatever, I'm going to open a channel and I want to learn how it works. Not an Ark, not Drivechain, or like these systems are not proposed in a way that this could be bootstrapped by Uncle Jim in their basement, and let's see if Uncle Jim will be the dominating sidechain. That would be a nice system, right? But this is not what people are proposing. At least that's not what I'm seeing.
I get confused about what we're not proposing. Or we're not proposing that companies proposing layer 2.
Well, so to make the connection to layer 2 labs or Drivechains, in Ark we just established that depending on the parameterization we could be off by 10, by 100, but we're not off by 10,000, right? How many fit into the Bitcoin blockchain? Yeah. And with Drivechains, we have a similar problem, actually. And actually, I couldn't really figure out if there's a technical reason for this or not. But the number of Drivechains is limited to an 8-bit number in the BIP. You can
so
read
it's also 256 then,
256 Drivechains.
Wow.
What the fuck?
Oh,
what
that's
the
funny.
fuck, Paul?
Oh, that's
who's gonna manage the Drivechains, Paul?
That's
and then people
funny.
say, well, you know, do you want 5,000 times drama? Because, hey, how many shitcoin Drivechains do we actually need? And like, guys, this is the future of money. you want 256 slots for ideas reserved now that hopefully will be. Why not 256 bits of possible drive chains? I want every, like I'm quoting Andreas Antonopoulos, I want every atom in the universe to be able to run its own drive chain.
Yeah.
That would be something that I would like find even more logical than limiting to such a arbitrary small number.
It's okay, so it's distributed. No, is that the word? Decentralized. It's not. It's like it seems decentralized because it's not one, right? But instead of creating like a central one, you've created like a central like oligarchy.
Yes, and we have a company advocating for the
But that's
soft fork now to close back
the
to
maximum number. It doesn't mean that you have to have 256
Yes, the
running
maximum.
at the same time.
You
So you
start
can have
slowly.
3 of them. It's up to the miners to decide. They're the ones that get this power to decide which drive chains they want to deploy and merge mine.
So it may be a technical reason, and probably Paul could tell us now that he says like this is maybe not possible to make such a large number of drive chains because something maybe explodes or breaks or something. But what I'm really curious about drive chains, like on a technical level, I'm not so pessimistic about it. I don't think it would affect Bitcoin so much when it's running, if it's running, but I never got how this negotiation is supposed to be of what are we going to activate and which miners are, support which drive chain, and maybe you guys can elucidate me on that.
I don't know I don't know the details of how it works. I literally have no idea how it's. I mean, I kind of understand something about merge mining. I think I'm still just hung up on this I can't believe these are like serious proposals that are limiting it to 256. I guess I'm just like it's funny that both Ark and Drivechains have the same not anti-decentralized, but this object, this parameter already built into them, which is almost there can only be I don't know, X number of validators or whatever. It's got this there's this we can only have this many peers. It's a peer-to-peer network, but there's only 256 people that can ever be senators in Rome, right? Or they can attain that level of being a real first-class citizen in that world. You know what I mean? And how you become there's only 256 first-class senators.
Now
citizens.
you have drive. Now you suddenly have miners selling the spots. In the drive
we go back to NFTs of whatever, and those people that hold those become this not. I don't know. Why am I thinking? I'm thinking class royalty system. Not everyone can be one of the 256 new central bankers or new I don't know, whatever seats at the council to be able to run an ASP, etc. Maybe I'm going totally the wrong direction with this, but
no, I think it's good that we're going this way. This should be asked because often this is not discussed in these proposals. How are we going to maintain the decentralization of the system? Right now we're mainly focused on scaling in the public debate. Sometimes we completely overlook the fact that everyone needs to talk a single server in order to run the system that you're proposing there right now. And I think it's good that we touch on that.
Yeah, a good distinction to be made is that in the case of Ark, you had 256 seats at the table, which are being allocated to the highest bidder, essentially. But in the case of Drivechains, anyone can propose one. There are 256 slots, and the miners pick which one they want to secure. So it's more open in the sense that I can run my own drive chain if I want, and I have... Basically, it becomes political in the sense that it's about miners choosing which one they want to deploy and secure. If it's not good enough, they can choose not to. If the miners are evil, they can choose to deploy an evil chain that's going to steal your funds. But in the end, as long as there is optionality and the user can say, yeah, I can just not use this. I can simply not support this sidechain by not locking or pegging my funds into it. I think that's fine. I've heard the Riga argument from Peter Todd, who basically said that it's cheaper to increase computation than to increase human politics, meaning that he implied that it's just simpler to increase the block size, which is another controversial opinion. But to scale, that's, I guess, the best tested and most conservative approach, but it's also the most divisive because it requires a hard fork. And the way that it doesn't require a hard fork is either through sidechains like two-way pegs that are being proposed with BIP 300 and 301. And there's also something that's happening on Litecoin right now. I'm not sure if you're paying attention. It's called the Mimblewimble extension block. It's essentially a privacy layer that required a soft fork. They have a bona fide block size increase on an extension block that's being mined alongside the main one. And they also have a pegging system. It's pretty interesting. It's pretty much increasing the block size without a hard fork, and it adds privacy. But I guess it's also limiting because it seems like in Bitcoin, people want to do a lot more with their coins, a lot more than transacting privately. There's a huge push to port. I guess Ethereum was the experiment, and Bitcoin is going to be the base layer that's going to integrate some of that functionality. I'm not sure if it's going to be RGB or it's going to be taproot assets, whatever they call it. But there's a demand for contracts on Bitcoin on some sort of layer. And that's going to happen one way or the other because there's a lot of money in the field with this programmability. Anyway, I don't remember where I was going with this, but it's definitely useful to distinguish between Ark having 256 seats at the table and Drivechains allowing only 256 sidechains to exist. I think it kind of makes sense in terms of human brains not caring about chain 167 about to get rug pulled. It's kind of a limit that makes sense from a social perspective and from how human brains work. Because if we had more, we would just DDoS Bitcoin with our proposals to open sidechains that nobody uses. And it's kind of pointless.
So I think I wanted to get on one more thing about Ark, which I find highly educative about Ark when you study Ark and try to understand how it works. The lesson that it told me personally is the way that Op CTV is used in the construction really shows you, and possibly this has been clear to other people previously already, but Ark has told me how you can pre-commit to a transaction in the future and use that feature to first build something that is non-interactive. So the receiver doesn't have to be online. You can already commit to paying the receiver without actually the receiver having to sign anything. And that you can use this principle of pre-locking with CTV to build layer 2-like constructions. And similar proposals, variants of that have been around, but Ark just was maybe the most popular suddenly. So many people saw and realized that CTV is a tool for build new next generation layer constructions for Bitcoin. I think this really helped in the discussion of how we're talking about CTV today, which I'm very, very happy about, how the education is on the right level. People are asking the right questions about these new opcodes. When we remember the last season of OpCTV wars, when people were afraid of their UTXOs being locked in a KYC Coinbase covenant tree and you cannot get them out. These were the things that people were discussing. Now you look on Twitter and people are talking about vaults and about how layer 2 proposals, how this can be used in Lightning and whether one can emulate the other one and whether APO plus CTV makes sense. And so it's a complete different level of conversation. And I think Ark also has something to do with it, because if you're proposing an upgrade like OpCTV, proposing it with a solution to an already existing problem, which is scaling, like Ark, can really shift the perception of how people react to that proposal. And I think Ark has tremendously helped in that regard.
CryptoSteel is the original Bitcoin cold storage backup, and it's been innovating self-custody since 2013. Designed and manufactured in Europe from the finest and most resistant stainless steel, the CryptoSteel cassette and the CryptoSteel capsule are industry standards. These cold storage devices are made to resist house fires, extreme floods, and physical shocks. You can also use CryptoSteel to store your important passwords, BIP39 passphrase, or Nostr private keys. Buy your CryptoSteel today from CryptoSteel.com and use promo code BTCTKVR to get a 10% discount. CryptoSteel. Secure your Bitcoin like an OG.
Okay, so we are back. We spent most of the first time in the previous part to talk about Lightning, to talk about open source versus free software. It wasn't quite versus, but it was more complementary. We also spoke about Ark. We spoke about Drivechains to the extent that we were able to. What else is out there? Do we have any other layer 2s or any other proposals to make Bitcoin more scalable? Or if we don't, how do you think we can do it in a better way than the stuff that already exists? Like, come on, I'm gonna try to raise VC money off of your ideas now.
Well, I was gonna say we obviously have Ecash. Like, we didn't talk about that one yet. Like, I think that's a really cool, interesting project. I feel like I like that we're like connecting it back to the event we're here at. Which apparently, like, you know, Ecash has been a topic that people have been working on, including some people in the community here at HCPP. Like, Ecash has been a project that people have been trying to make work for a long time. I think it's cool that Bitcoin, not to see like Bitcoin solves everything, but like, you know, or like Bitcoin is like the ultimate like dream of the free software movement or whatever. But, you know, it also is making Ecash real. Like, you're running a real Ecash project, right, Calle?
This is the best way of expressing it, I think, what you just said, because I heard a friend say today at this event that Bitcoin doesn't need Ecash to work, or Bitcoin doesn't improve. No, Ecash doesn't improve Bitcoin, but Bitcoin improves Ecash. The fact that we talk about Ecash today is because of Bitcoin, and this is an inversion of looking at this, like not as a Bitcoiner. If you look at this as a cryptographer, as a person interested in digital currency, also from a historical point of view, you will see it the other way around, right? You're interested in the Ecash and wonder why is it around these days again, and the reason for that is Bitcoin. This is beautiful. Yeah. So, but to come to your question, how you introduced this topic, I don't think that Ecash is a way to scale Bitcoin in a strict sense. You're not really scaling the number of Bitcoin transactions happening on chain, or that you compress on chain. You're not really giving more users access to private keys that let them move UTXOs on the blockchain. So I don't know how I would say it or express it, but the number of users of a system like Wallet to Satoshi obviously increases the number of Bitcoin users and the Bitcoin use, but it's not a technical improvement of Bitcoin on that level. So you can say it scales Bitcoin because it brings Bitcoin into the lives of more people. And with Ecash, you can do that better, more private, faster, and there are many things that we're just discovering because we're working on it today. But Bitcoin itself remains as restrictive or restricted, however you want to express it, as it is. And the proposals that we've been talking about before, like Ark, or more in a general sense, covenants that allow you to do things like Ark, are changes to the actual protocol itself, which I would consider scaling Bitcoin, or allowing more transactions to be compressed into a single transaction and cryptographically having everything secure and atomic and nothing can be rugged from anyone. So yeah, still Ecash is around. It doesn't scale Bitcoin. But it allows people to use Bitcoin services in a very private and fast way. And it is so private, it can almost be considered optimal privacy in a sense that you can build a money system, and it's this miracle from the 80s that is super scalable, extremely cheap, extremely fast. It costs nothing to make an Ecash transaction, and it's perfectly unlinked from the transaction that created that Ecash in the first place. So all of these properties are excellent, but this project never came to fruition. Now that we have the money of the internet, we can build better custodial systems, money transmitting systems, financial systems that also respect user privacy. So there's one way of attacking that and saying, like, I just want to improve privacy and this is the best tool for privacy. Ecash is the best option you can find. But I think it's also less complex in many cases because you don't need an account user database, you don't need to track the transactions. So it also takes away some of the headaches of running these services, which is a perfect match in a sense. Yeah.
I get so excited about how it makes services, really anonymous services that are like financially viable services on the internet that can exist and run as services on the internet and get paid to do so without having to know who they're serving. They don't have to have your email ad, like all that, like make an account stuff. Like you don't need that anymore. Like you literally don't need that anymore. You don't have to tell someone where you live to give them your credit card info so you can use their service. Like, and Ecash is what's going to make that possible, And like that's not, like you said, like that doesn't have anything to do with Bitcoin. But Ecash as like an instrument and a tool and a widely available like primitive like instrument that like free software people can use to build like the free software world that we want. Like we have this like totally new tool, and that's because like of Bitcoin. Yeah, I love what you said about it not scaling Bitcoin, only because I hadn't really heard someone say it like that before, and I think it's a cool thing to explain it, because I think it makes you open up the idea into what it actually does scale. Like if it's not scaling Bitcoin, it's scaling something else. It's like, well, what is that other thing? And you end up at this exciting place, which is like, wait, we can actually scale anonymous services.
Yeah, but it's also worth mentioning that Ecash is basically a layer 3 or 2.5, call it what you want, but it's built on top of the Lightning Network.
No, it doesn't have to be. I feel like the fact that it interoperates with Lightning in a nice way, and you can do transfers between like an Ecash system and the Lightning system is cool. But I think just because you can execute those transfers doesn't mean that there's any like hierarchy to them in terms of like one being like above or below the other. Like because with layers you end up with this numbering system, but like they're not like, it's not like there's like a cake and we've got layers in it and we have to have like the second before you get to the third.
It's not a cake? I thought it's a cake.
Well, I mean, it's only a 2-layer cake. There's no third layer.
Well, I also strongly object. It's not a layer, and I've been repeating myself too many times about that. But I recently heard someone rather naive with the subject say, of course it's a layer 3 because it's the thing that interacts with the Lightning Network, which is a layer 2. Of course it's a layer 3. I don't understand why this is even a discussion, the person said. And I came like, for the first time I understood why this is so intuitively correct, because you think of layers of interaction. If you think of layers of interaction, it looks like a layer 3 because it only talks to the Lightning Network. Cashu in this case talks only to the Lightning Network. But I would rather prefer us to reserve the term of a layer, which is a useful term for in the case of Bitcoin, to restrict ourselves to things that are executable onto the bottom layers without any permission. So if you cannot exit from a higher layer to a lower layer without asking anyone's permission, it's just not a layer. It's a system that interacts with Bitcoin. It's a system that interacts with Lightning, which makes it look like a layer 3, but could be a layer 4 or 15. There is no system or I don't know, good way to categorize them in that way if you don't give this constraint that you can exit without permission. And that's what I like to use. But to your point with anonymous systems, anonymous services, providing anonymous services on the web, this comes a little bit back to our discussion in the beginning, of us imagining that everyone is running a web server and can offer services to anonymous web users that don't have a username, just have an IP address, logs on to your service, and some, a payment method of the future will then fix this potential global economy that could emerge from that. I think the fact that we accept that we have this user account model with a username and a password already as a standard, as a default thing that we think everything must be based on. This is the world, how you see yourself, your cyber self is encapsulated in these username password combinations. I think we're almost being gaslighted into believing this is how things must be or should be. And the reason why we ended up with this, I guess, is to restrict access, because open and anonymous networks are also always open networks. If you don't know who you're dealing with, that means that everyone can enter the system, and you could replicate yourself and Sybil any system by creating as many identities as you like. And accounts help to mitigate for that. But with Bitcoin, we have solved this problem on a much, much larger level, which is Satoshi solved the system of organizing an anonymous set of actors using proof of work. It's even better than, organizing a closed set of users, for example. Getting consensus with 5 people, for example, you don't need proof of work for that. But if the system is supposed to be open and anonymous and no identities, then the only option that we know of is proof of work. And we can use this proof of work, the way that we express Satoshis as a denomination of this proof of work, to rate limit interactions on the internet using Bitcoin. So here's where Ecash and Bitcoin again collide in a beautiful fashion, that you can offer anonymous web services because we have found the thing that can slow them down by asking for a payment. Crazy.
It's insane. It's cool. There's a lot of really cool stuff happening, I think, in the Bitcoin ecosystem. You call it ecosystem, right? Because it's the knock-on effects. It's where the fish are and who's in the meadows growing the I don't know, whatever, grass for the deer, however you imagine an ecosystem, right? There's these really cool feedback loops that we're getting of people who really care about all the same sorts of things, in terms of decentralization, self-sovereignty, which I really feel the self-sovereignty movement is the new free software movement, to some extent. Self-sovereignty is the new word we're using for this kind of technology, but I think you can I think that if you look at it and you went through the points that Stallman made today about what is free software, I think you kind of end up around where what we're think of as self-sovereignty is, right? These are kind of the same. You end up in a cool same place, but it's cool to see it reborn. It's people almost rediscovering the same principles that the free software people discovered independently, again, because it was important to us as a core value system, right? And so it's cool to be able to say, we are helping the self-sovereign movement is helping continue to bring these ethos that have been with hardcore independence hackers for a long time, and we're making all this stuff actually work, it works together, and this vision of being able to run your own stuff from home, make services for yourself as an independent person, and have that be the way that you interact with the world and get paid for it, and an independent system where you don't rely on other people or other systems is becoming a reality, and it is largely because of Satoshi's genius and invention and proof of work. And that's cool. That's pretty cool. I don't know. And Ecash is a big part of that in a way that I don't think I really appreciated until today. So that's cool. So thank you for being here to help us understand that, yeah.
Minor correction about proof of work being invented for Bitcoin or by Bitcoin. It has been around for a while. Even before Adam Back, he gets credited most of the times, but in the white paper you're gonna find 2 other cryptographers.
It was a woman, I think. It was a woman, I think, who invented proof of work.
Stornella and someone Habermas and Stornella.
They're quoted in the white paper.
No, they invented the time chain. They're the paper in the footnotes. That's the time chain paper. Is Habermas and Stornella. I don't remember. I think Back is the proof of work guy. But yeah, anyways, sorry, they're not proof of work related. They're time chain related.
We spent a lot of time talking about Ecash system, and Cashu is one of them, and I take a lot of pride in the fact that I was in a Riga bar when you came up with the idea, and you're like, yeah, you're thinking about Ecash. I thought you were just drunk and having your musings, thinking about stuff, and then a few days later you announced that you were launching Cashu, which is an Ecash system. It felt incredible, right? Because I was like, oh, this guy was really onto something. He wasn't just babbling about random concepts. You actually came up in a bar which was dirty and had loud music, except for the moment when DJ Rutsel played. I love you, DJ Rutsel. But yeah, this is my way of complimenting your work, and I like your sincerity. You're not trying to sell it as the solution that also scales Bitcoin. You're presenting it as a solution that scales something else, which is not necessarily Bitcoin, but uses BTC, the token, on top of Lightning.
Oh no, yeah. You have to think of Ecash as a separate thing that found Bitcoin and a reason to exist because of Bitcoin. I think Ecash itself, the cryptographic primitive of a blind signature, as Nifty said before, is allows you to basically make operations between users and clients, servers and clients, and blind these interactions. So this can be used for money. One of the coolest ways of using that is for money. And wherever we represent a wallet with a balance, basically I think of it that way, that I see a ledger-based system behind that, and I think it can be replaced with an eCash system where you just throw out the database that you've been carrying around and replace it with this blind signature scheme. This kind of, through the back door, also introduces perfect privacy, but in some cases you could even use that concept to give out anonymous gift cards for your a supermarket or
supermarket.
Supermarket. Sorry, for your supermarket, and still retain excellent privacy properties. So, kind of our goal becomes like creating a protocol that people can use to build other applications, other use cases for eCash that I couldn't have thought about before as well. So not only limited to coupling it to Lightning Network, potentially also to, manage access rights to websites, for example, in a blinded way.
That was technical. Let's talk about memes. What do you guys think about the Supra Cycle? And before you ask me why the Supra Cycle, it sounds like the Super Cycle, which was a dumb idea, but the Supra Cycle is about getting a Toyota Supra and then getting a girlfriend, which actually means that you're moving out of your mom's basement and you're doing something with your life. And you're not waiting for institutions to dump on you. You get a Supra within the Supra Cycle, and then you get a girlfriend. And when you're going to ask why a Supra, I'm going to tell you because it's 90% of the Lambo. You can't afford the Lambo, and it's at 10% of the price of the Lambo. So what do you guys think about the Supra Cycle? I know you're a Nissan 350Z kind of girl.
It's true. For those of you who are like confused, I tweeted out a while ago the Nissan, I can't even remember the name of it. Nissan 350Z was like the sexiest car ever made or something like that. I like had all these pictures of like, look at how cool this car looks. Anyways, it's like, is that my favorite car? It might be. What do I think about Supra Cycle? I feel like what you're saying is make yourself successful in life now. Don't wait for like, maybe I'm taking this somewhere that you didn't mean to. It was like deep philosophical, but like, don't wait for institutions to print the money to make your life like a good life. Go out and get a good life. You know, get a Toyota Supra. Why not?
Yeah. maybe you have already reached your moon. You just don't realize it yet.
Yeah, the moon was here all along. It just looked like a Toyota Supra. It's like 90% of a Lambo. Like,
it's the most sound technical analysis of the Bitcoin price that I've ever seen. So 100%.
oh yeah, that's a deep one.
But I have a proposition to make. You always assume that you first need the Supra to get a girlfriend, but I would maybe consider going the other way around. First get a girlfriend, and then maybe she might ask you to get a Supra, and this would be the ultimate Supra cycle.
You get the girlfriend that wants the Supra?
Oh yeah.
I see. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I think
That's
so.
a guy.
Right.
Well, that's also an option.
But it's fine, because if you get a super girlfriend, she's really unique and understands your masculinity and respects it. Unlike the Tesla girlfriends, who are a bunch of Karens who like to virtue signal, or the Mercedes-Benz girlfriends who are just fancy and want you to take them to nice clubs, or the Volkswagen girlfriends who are too plain. They're too homely. You don't want those. You want the Supra girlfriends.
Wow, there's like a whole commentary in here on like the girl-car relationship that I was not aware of. Okay.
Oh yeah, it's gonna become a card game or something almost.
Yeah, but I didn't realize that you could pair like women personalities with cars. This is makes sense though.
Yes.
So yeah, it's a good strategy, I think, or it's an interesting way of describing women.
Yeah, it's a
as
bit like the
categories.
Slavoj Žižek with the toilets to describe the mentality of the different Europeans.
Yeah, exactly. That was a great bit. That was a
That's a good
really.
one.
I learned some things on that. Yeah, it was also an informative comparison.
So-
I think.
So, do you generate your Supra Cycle girlfriend pics using something like Midjourney, or is there an infinite supply of women in short dresses with a sexy car that you have access to?
That's a good question. Go to your favorite search engine, preferably not Google or not Bing, and type in Toyota Supra girlfriend and see what you get. Preferably turn off the safe search results. And you're gonna get something very nice with girls in bikinis. I mean, there's a whole culture about Toyota Supras and women, and you're going to find it with a simple web search. Don't do that next to your mom if you live in her basement.
Delete your browser history.
If you're still living with your parents, take care.
Delete your browser history.
I was gonna say, so how did you? So Vlad, what's the story on you ending up on this Google rabbit hole? Did you come up with the Supras? Did you come up with the Supra cycle before or after you came up with the not Google search?
No comment. But I took a look at the Toyota website, right? I know that they make some of the most reliable cars.
Okay.
And I have been a fan of JDM vehicles since I was playing Need for Speed games. When I was a pre-teenager and then a teenager, Need for Speed Underground was the shit back then. And I was playing with the Toyota Supra, with the Nissan 350Z, with the Subaru Impreza, with what else was there? All sorts of Japanese cars. The Mazda RX-7 and RX-8. What else did I miss? Mitsubishi Eclipse and all of these beautiful cars. And then I was like, whoa, there's a new Supra. But I was actually looking for Corollas, for Camrys, for Priuses. I actually think that the new Prius is pretty cool. It doesn't look like an ugly, boring, plain, homely Prius that doesn't get you a nice girlfriend. But anyway, the Supra looks very cool. And I was like, holy shit, this is... So for the looks and for the price, I think you can't get anything better.
It's the anti-Lambo. That's why it's so sexy.
It's anti-Lambo.
It's the anti-statement to the crypto bros.
But it's not like I can afford a Lambo.
You'll, even if you could, you should take the Supra. And
the Supra's the Bitcoiner car, right? Like Bitcoiners don't buy Lambos, you know?
Exactly.
Because we want all Bitcoin.
If you're hearing this, Toyota, you're going to find my email in the description. Contact me. I take sponsorships. If you send me a Supra, I'm not going to say no to that.
Oh, they should.
If you send me 2 Supras, I'm going to get 2 girlfriends. So I'm not going to say no to that either.
Okay.
Okay. they should start
Do you have
selling.
a car that you like, Calle? Like mine was the Nissan 350Z. Vlad's going for the super girlfriend route. What's your car vehicle of choice?
I don't have one, to be honest. No, I don't have one. I'm thinking about this guy. Well, I just thought of a story of in Baltic Honey Badger. I met this very old guy who was a Bitcoiner, and he told us his story that he locked up some Bitcoin, a big stash of Bitcoin, like years ago in a 25-year time lock for his grandchildren, and he prophesied that the price of Bitcoin would become 600 billion to the time when they unlock. So his grandchildren will be able to buy spaceships with the Bitcoin that he put in there. So maybe that's the ultimate Supra Cycle.
So your vehicle is a spaceship.
Yes, I want to get the spaceship after the time lock of this old dude.
Yeah, but the question is, if one Bitcoin is going to be worth $600 billion, then how much will a hamburger be? Like $10,000?
More.
I think this is a thing Bitcoiners tell ourselves because it's like a truth we need to hear about, like, don't assume that holding Bitcoin is going to work out to make you like fabulously wealthy, right? It's like, you know, like you hold on to Bitcoin because you want the assurance of a future, not because you want the assurance of a spaceship, you know? So I think that's why we tell ourselves that. All that being said, like, and I think it's true, I think that's the right way to think about it. I also think that we don't really understand the value of hard money yet. Like, I was watching one of the talks here this weekend with the woman from Satoshi's page. She's like a UK dentist. Her story is crazy. Have y'all heard this one? Yeah, Victoria. I was just so flabbergasted listening to her story. This is like a brilliant woman who was a dentist in the UK and was starting a business in 2008. Like, and she said she almost lost. She was very hungry for like a few years because her business was like on the brink of failure for a long time. And it had to do with the fact that she had assumed she'd be able to get a loan when she needed it. And then the system fell out from underneath her and she had to make do without getting that bank loan that she was assuming she'd be able to get to run her business. And she found Bitcoin a few years later, like after her company was like okay and successful and like working. This was dentist practice, right? She like learned about Bitcoin in like 2016, figured it out, understood its value as hard money, and she went super deep on what is money, how does money work. She like had all this history in her presentation about the Bank of England and the history of credit and like central banks. Like, you know, I hadn't really thought about how like the UK was the place that the modern central bank really kind of like came into fashion, so to speak, back in like the 1600s, right? And like before that we had hard money, or like kind of during that period. Hard money went away fairly recently. Like the gold standard only went away 100 years ago, relatively speaking. But anyways, it was just really impressive to have someone like explaining about how hard money really looks, and I don't think any of us really understand it, you know. And like, so I think we're in for a shock over the next 20 years, and maybe it won't be able to buy us a spaceship, but I think hard money is going to be a really revolutionary concept that I'm not ready for. I haven't been ready for. This talk made me realize that I'm like, I don't know what that's like. I don't know how to get ready for that except hold Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's a difference of culture, I guess. And it goes back to the cypherpunk versus Austrian economist perspective. Cypherpunks want internet money that works now and that they can use to not go to the state to ask for permission to transact and to participate in the economy. Austrian economists will tell you, well, you have this better form of money, don't spend this one, spend the other one that's weaker. But at the same time, this enforces and reaffirms the position of the state. And you don't care about it because you reckon that at some point in the future, the system that you use mostly, as opposed to the one that you use for storage, is going to fail. And you're going to have a standard of the one that you're saving that's going to replace the current one. But it's counterintuitive in the sense that if you use fiat money, you're going to increase the demand for fiat money, and you're going to legitimize further that we should be transacting using fiat money. So it doesn't matter how many billions of dollars are being printed, as long as there is a demand for them and there's someone on the other side saying, yeah, this is a form of money that I accept, the prices go up. But at the same time, this mentally and religiously and from every point of view, this is the unit of account to which we fall back. And unless we use Bitcoin for payments, how do we expect there to be a market? Like, how do you expect someone to actually want to give you $1 billion or whatever for a Bitcoin if there is no market for that? So it's an egg and chicken situation. Someone needs to be using Bitcoin for others to be able to HODL and to be able to get that long-term store of value profitability. But you have to understand that everyone who uses Bitcoin is basically increasing the demand for Bitcoin and is raising awareness that Bitcoin can be used for payments. So I'm not telling you what you should do. All I'm saying that the Toyota Supra is pretty cool, and girlfriends are nice.
ShopNBit is the online store where you can buy anything with your Bitcoin. Choose between more than 800,000 products, book flights and hotels, and order everything else through the concierge service. With ShopNBit, you can buy your weekly groceries, get the latest iPhone, upgrade your computer, buy something sexy for your new girlfriend, book a trip to El Salvador through the travel hacking service, and also grab a copy of the latest Bitcoin Takeover magazine to read in the airplane. Everything is integrated with a familiar shopping experience that doesn't track you and deletes your data after the order gets completed. You also get a 3% discount if you pay in Bitcoin. Try ShopNBit today and use promo code BTCTKVR for a €5 discount on your first order.
Well, we're just saying, right? The Austrian economist would say, spend the bad money, keep the good one. And this is primarily also related to your expectation of whether the value of this monetary system will increase or not, of this unit of account will increase. But on this conference here, I have met so many people that where they don't have a choice at all. Bitcoin is the only currency that they can use in many situations, and this is a completely uncovered fact from this theorem that you just proposed. And this is also what the cypherpunks have been understanding from the first moment. This is the reason why we have Bitcoin. It's not to create something that will increase in value forever, but it is something that will be there for everyone forever, or something like that. And I've never seen such a density of people who lost their bank accounts, who just have no access to the financial system as here, and for different various, sometimes very stupid reasons, and sometimes for reasons of economic nature, like this lady, the dentist, who got into economic trouble as a person who never thought that she would ever get into those situations, as a dentist, expecting that you will be well off, and then being pushed by the cracking financial system into a lifeboat. Like Bitcoin is the kind of story that fits into the cypherpunk narrative, but really on a tangible level. It's not the crazy hacker who wants to, send money to a weird place, and that's the reason why they want to use Bitcoin. No, it's a normal person in the United States of America suffering from the financial crisis and discovering the exit. Yeah. Well.
Now we have to think about the unbanked, and that's a very powerful idea to have and to keep in mind each time we refer to Bitcoin. I guess it's easy to think of fundamentals and think of number go up situations in the first world, but even in the first world we saw that we have cases of financial censorship, even in Canada of all places, where all the human rights indexes present them as a very free country, but they turned out to be super authoritarian in a situation that did not require it at all. They acted as if they were in a state of war. I mean, from the government's perspective, they enacted they went to great lengths to stop the Canadian truck drivers from protesting. So yeah, we have to understand that Bitcoin exists as an alternative, but I also believe that Bitcoin should be for everyone who wants to use it. And this goes back to the scaling debate. Right now, Bitcoin is not for everyone, but is for anyone, as there is a fee that you must pay, and you must be able to afford that.
Well, for anyone who wants, and there are not so many who want yet.
I agree with that. But yeah, maybe that this is part of it, these bull markets, bear markets, all of these boom cycles where we deal with speculators and new use cases that are being hyped. Sometimes I put my head on the pillow at night and I think about the fact that Bitcoin has not made any progress to scale in the last few years. We improved Lightning, but the Lightning requires on-chain transactions to be able to open and close the channels. So we can't really scale how many channels are being open as long as the block size is the same. It doesn't mean that we must increase the block size. Maybe we find some new workarounds. But in the meantime, Ethereum has been able to create like 3 or 4 layer 2s. And it doesn't really matter that they're not super decentralized because they play the political game pretty well. They have lobbyists, they have whatever. It seems like they won their seat at the table. They were not labeled as security. They can keep going. They built these layer 2s. And if they find another use case as popular as NFTs, they're not going to run into scalability issues, which means that they can onboard millions of, you can call them degens or whatever, who trade monkey tokens or whatever, or frogs. And it's going to be super popular, which gets them a lot of transaction volume and a lot of users. And it frustrates me, the thought that Bitcoin cannot get this. And we limit ourselves and say, yeah, but that's not sound money. But not everything should be sound money. We want more users. We want more people to use Bitcoin. We want them to pay transactions to the miners. This partially makes me a Drivechains shill because I see it as one of the simplest solutions, even though I agree with the criticisms. But long rant.
I mean, aren't we building money here? Obviously, I would also subscribe to everything should happen on Bitcoin in some form, but our priority is money, right? And for Ethereum, it's not that. And in a sense, when you're speaking about these NFT pumps and when this gets super popular and you have this huge influx of new crypto users, is that really what Bitcoin is trying to achieve? I see where you would want to benefit from the fees, but the whether you're trying to skim off some of the value increase of Ethereum onto Bitcoin itself means also that you kind of believe that the value in Ethereum is righteous. So
this is not a virtue game, it's an incentives game, and it's a financial game.
Well, yeah, you were saying that we didn't scale Bitcoin, and I thought scaling Bitcoin in my mind means increasing the number of people who use Bitcoin for payments, for stacking sats, for doing the financial stuff, and for paying for an Apple. It's not really using Bitcoin as to store your NFTs. That's not what I would consider Bitcoin as being successful. Indeed, Ethereum is better at that. I would rather see it sometimes on Ethereum, but because why should it be on Bitcoin? I think the world is a bit skewed because Ethereum's price is treated as an asset that also behaves like digital gold. But I think if Vitalik, Vitalik himself says that more than once, it's supposed to be a utility token, and the price of Ethereum should be proportional of the utility of the computation on this crazy ledger that you pay for. But it's not. It has a huge speculative value. And I think, Bitcoiners who say they want to profit of all of the shitcoining also on Bitcoin must also admit that at some point then Ethereum largely deserves the value that it has because it has attracted exactly that which they desire. So yeah, my personal view on that is number of users. I mean people buying apples. That is my personal goal where I would see Bitcoin succeed. Someone having a wallet to get their income and pay for their livelihood using a system that cannot be destroyed, right? And well, NFTs are not part of that.
Yeah, I think I agree with that, and I love that like classification of like scaling Bitcoin being specifically like using it as money, right? And like all these other use cases, like, yeah, it's funny when you say that. It's like, no, I haven't ever seen. People are like, oh, all these like ordinals, inscriptions, people and uses are moving into space, and it never really registers to me that as like Bitcoin scaling, so to speak, like, or like Bitcoin doesn't register as Bitcoin like growing, you know what I mean? Like that doesn't like, to me, that doesn't count as Bitcoin adoption, because I see Bitcoin as being the money use case, and any use case of Bitcoin which isn't the money use case, I'm like, yeah, that's nice, okay, whatever. Like, that's not really scaling Bitcoin though. That's scaling, I don't know, some other bullshit. Like, it's scaling the other uses, like, sure, but that's not scaling like Bitcoin as money. That's like not the project I signed up for, you know, like that's not the project I'm working on. So like, as far as I'm concerned, like, no, like I don't. Like, that's nice. It's kind of like, that's nice, honey. Like, okay, like more people are holding like UTXOs so they can like trade shitcoins or whatever, like pass NFTs around. And I'm like, I don't care about that. Like, that's not interesting. That's not exciting. That's not like, I don't know. I guess it's a thing that's happening, but like that's not, I wouldn't call that scaling like the project that I'm, like the thing I'm working on. I feel like there was another. Oh, I had a question though. Okay, this is like a little bit of like maybe a tangential topic, but where is there? Maybe this already exists today, so pardon my ignorance. But is there like a decentralized off centralized exchange way to convert Ethereum to Bitcoin? Like, how do you trade ETH for Bitcoin? Like, where is the East of Bitcoin market? Like, does that exist? Is there like a place you can like exchange Bitcoin for ETH that's like in a decentralized ecosystem?
You mean like an atomic swap between the two?
Yeah, does that exist? Has someone built this yet?
I don't know.
Why has this not been built yet? This seems like an.
How you define decentralized?
Well, if like Bitcoin. Okay, maybe Sideshift exists. I was gonna say, oh, maybe that's the thing then, because I was gonna be like, okay, if Bitcoin is gonna be the Bitcoin standard, and I really think it is gonna be. I mean, the Bitcoin standard is here. We're living in it. Which future is not equally distributed, so to speak. Futures is here, it's just not equally distributed. But like Bitcoin is like going to be the new internet money standard, and people are going to keep wanting to use Ethereum. So like, where is the decentralized exchange where you can swap between these two networks? I don't know. Maybe that's, I don't know where that falls on the political spectrum of chain maxism, but I'm curious now.
What's the question more exactly?
Where is the decentralized marketplace to exchange like Bitcoin for other coins, like for ETH?
I think Lightning was supposed to be that with atomic swaps. It was initially presented as this chain agnostic technology that can be added also into Litecoin and also into Monero or whatever, and use that as some sort of highway
so
for
each
swaps.
Lightning node could be a swapper.
Yeah, it could. But
can you do an atomic swap of Bitcoin against Ethereum?
I don't know. It sounds like a fun project.
Well, yeah.
I don't know.
There's actually this project that was built by a guy who worked at Blockstream, but he's not working with the project anymore. His name is Eric Martindale, and he built, the first one was Fabric, and the second one was, Portal. Portal basically is a Bitcoin layer 3, which uses the Lightning Network to make swaps between chains. And they successfully modified the code that was initially built for Ethereum for the Raiden network to be able to do swaps between Lightning and Raiden. So they're building that. It's actually funded by Coinbase Ventures, which is unexpected because Coinbase rarely ever puts any money in Bitcoin projects. But I think there's a lot of interesting experimentation there. And the fact that, the way that I see it, maybe you present using Bitcoin for non-monetary purposes evil, but I see it as increasing the demand for the money. Like, I don't care if people use the dollar bill to make a payment or they use it to draw on it and
But that is
exhibit it as art.
There's this theory, right? The number of NFT users increases the number of the currency. Is that very obvious, you think? Or is that just something you assume?
Well, you have seen this whole ordinal inscription situation, right? They paid so many fees to the Bitcoin miners. I think sometimes I consider, or I have this conspiracy theory that ordinals were made by the miners and financed by them to increase the demand for block space and collect more fees.
That's genius. I never thought of that.
I mean, as someone who has known Casey for a long time, who was like the guy who made ordinals happen, I can guarantee that it is not. That is not what happened. That is definitely not what happened.
But it still would be genius.
But the way it worked out, yeah, it definitely worked out for the miners. Like it was like a Christmas present, I feel like, to them. They're like, oh my God, we have more money now. This is great. So yeah.
And also these ordinal inscription users that were so, I guess, vilified and presented as attackers of Bitcoin actually ran full nodes to be able to submit the inscriptions. So suddenly this crazy use case that people like Saifedean and Pierre Rochard dismissed ended up creating more full nodes and adding them to the network. I think that was pretty cool to just get people who otherwise don't care about Bitcoin to start running a full node and submit transactions. And I guess in the long run, they're going to be much more familiar with what Bitcoin can do, and they're going to use it much more. I mean, that's the way I see it. You can disagree with me. You can say that they're 100% degens and they're never going to use Bitcoin properly, whatever that means.
No, 100%. And I mean, I'm just a realist in that as long as you cannot really prevent it from happening. Are we still recording?
Yeah.
Oh, we are still recording. So as long as you cannot prevent it from happening, I think you have to accept it. I don't see any reason to try to kill ordinals from the Bitcoin blockchain because it's simply not possible. So don't even try and don't waste your energy in trying to censor a certain type of transaction. But there is still the interesting idea, and this is also in the spirit of Drivechains, trying to be able to compress commitments of another chain onto the Bitcoin blockchain. So trying to compress maybe the movement of many ordinals onto a sidechain. So the hope here is that we will come up with a sidechain design that will then, things are, this studio is rock and roll, but I think we're still going. At least I see the recorder. But so there's still the thesis that is unanswered is if we would create sidechains, preferably for these NFTs with big blocks, for example, would people still use them? Because also sometimes what you hear of proponents of some weirder, more exotic proponents of NFTs is that some NFTs gain their value by being especially burdensome to a system. So you have this weird balance of trying to offload this bloat of ordinals onto a more efficient system and make everyone happy that they can use this cheap sidechain for their ordinals. But at the same time, you have people who try to sabotage the system willingly because their perceived value of their stamp, for example, one of these ordinal derivatives that bloat your UTXO system consciously, they derive their supposed value from destroying the system or slowing it down. So sometimes I wonder where will we end up with this, because obviously the only answer that there is for this question is fees. And so we will end up in a very, very high fee environment. And in that world, the toilet paper and the banana transaction that you will be doing on Bitcoin is also supposedly going to happen on a sidechain. So in that world where we have successfully offloaded the NFTs into a sidechain, we assume that the fees are going to be so high that on the Bitcoin blockchain itself we will only have these super large mechanical state updates of sidechains that are being mined on top of that. Yeah. So still I'm asking why only 256.
Remember the paper wallet? Ah, yes, the good old days when you printed your Bitcoin private key on an offline computer? It was so fun, but not really easy and totally not secure. Today, we have Dime, a chip card that acts just like your good old paper wallet, but with all the modern security features and top-notch functionality. It turns your Bitcoin into a bearer asset, which you can easily trade in person. Thanks to NFC, you can use the Dime card with your smartphone. Creating a new pair of Bitcoin keys takes just 2 swipes. Check your balance in real time, create multiple key pairs. Whenever you want, you can reveal your Bitcoin wallet's private key with just a single click. The simple, uncluttered interface lets you quickly see if a key pair has been unsealed. Finally, the cold storage you've been looking for. Available now on sadodime.io.
One for the mid-size ordinals, one for the very big ordinals, and one for US Tether.
Yeah, the Bitcoin fee market is the whole interesting thing, right? This is a little bit of a tangent, but I was recently doing some history into early Bitcoin stuff for some trivia questions. Part of what at TabConf is we did this trivia show about Bitcoin, and so all the questions were early Bitcoin questions. Anyways, I'm off topic, but the fee market on Bitcoin, the history of it is interesting. When Bitcoin first launched, there weren't any fees for transactions. It was
I was talking to a guy who made this Stallman Ecash system 10 years ago, and I told him it only works because of Lightning, because you can pay in a couple hundred Satoshis and just use the system. And he said, well, back in the day, no one cared. Everything was for free. You could literally just peg in with a couple thousand Satoshis in the Ecash system back in the day, because everything was zero fee.
Yeah, fees. There were no fees.
No fees.
So, I don't know. I guess the fee market has evolved, as usage does, right? Oh, no.
Bless you.
Thanks. So it's been interesting to, worrying about the fee market or, making decisions or, pronouncements of what's going to happen with Bitcoin and fees and people's ability to transact. I think it's good and smart to think about it and build out scaling things scaling things like Lightning, etc. With that in mind, throughput in mind. I guess, man, I've been wrong about stuff before, and this is probably one that I'm wrong about, but I always go back to let's just wait and see. Let's wait and see what happens with the fee market. Maybe it'll be fine. Maybe that's wishful thinking. But I just I'm totally zen about the fee market on Bitcoin. I'm not worried about it.
In case of you mean the question whether we will have enough fees to sustain Bitcoin security?
That, and then fees getting too high so people can't transact.
Well, isn't that's my question? Isn't that the case? Don't we have to reach the state where the fees are too high that people can use Bitcoin in order for Bitcoin to succeed? I mean, is Bitcoin true? I mean, if we just continue the way we do today for 20 years, Bitcoin, I wouldn't consider it a success. Although it's still there and it's very useful for some people, but the goal is much, much, much larger than that, right? So today already we're at a competitive fee market. Some people cannot buy a coffee. Coffee doesn't work anymore for a long time, but it's still a burden for some people to make a normal purchase with Bitcoin today. If Bitcoin is going to grow, maybe you can correct me, is there any way that Bitcoin can grow without the fees going astronomically high?
This is where I'm I could be wrong, but I'm just I'm not worried about it. I guess that's I don't think so. I don't think that's going to happen. And I think that the mining industry is going to look way different in a decade. And that these assumptions we have about the amount of capital miners need to be making from Bitcoin as an instrument is I don't think that's going to turn out the way that we think it will. And I think it'll be gradual and slowly enough that by the time it gets 20, 30 years from now, when it starts becoming what we think will be a problem, I don't think we're even going to realize that was the thing we needed to worry about. I think it's going to be, I think it's going to be weirdly something. Like, I think it's going to be weirdly a non-event. And so I don't worry about it. I just like, also it's like a little bit of premature optimization, we call it in like software design, where you solve a problem that you solve a problem that you imagine you can think about and you can see concretely, but that isn't a problem yet. It's optimizing for a thing that isn't actually a problem yet. And there's a real risk to doing that. Like, the risk is that you change something fundamental about the system in your attempt to optimize off a thing that you think is going to be a problem, without actually knowing what the problem is or what the shape of it is actually when it finally does arrive. Like, first of all, the problem may never arrive. And so you did work and you changed something and you like maybe made the system suboptimal in other ways because you were trying to like change something before it actually became a problem. And it's a real danger. And like, so I guess it's like, I guess it's a more like colloquial way of saying if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like, I think I guess I have like this, like, I think we can wait until it's a problem. And then when signs of it being a problem start showing up, then we can come together and figure out how to fix it. And then we'll be able to fix it in the right way because we'll have a real good understanding of what the problem actually looks like. And we don't really know what the problem looks like right now or what it's going to look like or what form it's going to take exactly. And anything we try to do now is just like not going to actually help whatever the actual problem is when it actually shows its head up. And so like, I'm kind of just like, let's just wait and see. Like, there's like, we are okay waiting and seeing. Like, we're not going to end up in the ocean drowning. Like, we are at like an amazingly wonderful place where we can afford to wait and see. We have the resources to wait and see, I think.
But it really depends on who you ask. And Bitcoin is so many different things for so many different people. And some want to be able to stream 20 Satoshis within 50 milliseconds, every 50 milliseconds in a final transaction. And for that, we needed the Lightning Network, which also required changes to the Bitcoin base layer in order to build the Lightning Network. And today, we depend on the Lightning Network completely. So it kind of depends. If you're a stacker who does one Bitcoin transaction per month just to save money, then Bitcoin probably can scale to a very large number of people already today. But I'm not sure if we should wait until we figure out that Bitcoin didn't fulfill its money property. So there are multiple proposals on the table, and just recently, I think we have seen also activity on the GitHub repository of the Bitcoin Core client on activating Op CTV and APO and Op Vault at the same time by Umbrel. And so I think I feels like things are changing, and I'm very optimistic about these changes because they tackle real problems that we already observe. Sometimes these problems might not be perceived by everyone with the same priority, but in case of scaling Bitcoin to a very large number of people, we need to fix Lightning with APO, and we need to be able to build layer 2 systems such as Ark or derivatives thereof using covenants with CTV. And we're about to improve self-custody vault properties of hardware wallets and so on with Op Vault. So it looks like we're getting a very nice package of things that we can truly build on in the following years, and I'm very optimistic about that. This might actually work out this time.
I only slightly disagree with Lisa in the sense that it's true that we don't know the shape of the problem, but we know what the problem is. And we have this having cycle every 210,000 blocks. And the only assumption is that we're going to have fees to compensate for that. That was Satoshi's biggest bet. But only because we have the luxury to wait for 10 years doesn't mean that we should not put time and effort into research, so that when the time comes to make a decision, we already have multiple proposals and we pick the best of them. Waiting for that moment to happen and then looking for what's out there to fix the problem might lead to a super suboptimal choice. And I'm actually grateful that there is research in Bitcoin at all, because once you start messing around and being like, oh, we can do this, we can do that, we can scale it in this way, you get a lot of negative backlash from the community. They're going to call you a scammer because you're trying to change Bitcoin, you're trying to propose something that doesn't match some philosophical approach to it and break some narrative, because in the end, everyone understands Bitcoin according to some story or narrative or expectation about what it should do. But I think it's really great that there are lots of these proposals. And honestly, I think Bitcoin needs in the following years a change in culture, from this monetary maximalism to more of a tech-based maximalism, in the sense that we should support projects that are built on Bitcoin and use BTC, the token, for stuff that may not be money, like RGB or whatever. Because my concern is that this stuff is going to get built, it's going to have a huge potential, it's going to raise money, but the users will not be there because they're going to say, yeah, you're doing shit coins, and that's not useful. Tokens are useful. Stable coins have a huge market demand right now. USDT has more volume every day than Bitcoin, sometimes by an order of twice more. So honestly, I think the greatest progress that Bitcoin has made indirectly was to provide USDT to African and South American countries. And who benefits from this? Companies like Bitfinex and Binance that offered the service. They offered the on-ramp. They also offered the off-ramp. They provide very simple wallets, and they essentially dollarize the world in a way that cannot be censored by the banking system. It's pretty cypherpunk when you think about it. It's kind of cool, but it's not Bitcoin, and we are here for Bitcoin. And that was my long rant. Do you have any comment for that, or do I ask you about Base 58 and the event next week?
Yeah, we can talk about the event that's happening next week. I don't know how to tie it into what you just said. I don't even know if I like what's happening next week. Oh, right. Running a conference in Europe called Bitcoin Plus Plus. It's the first ever European Bitcoin Plus Plus, and really excited to bring it to Berlin with the help of the Bitcoin Berlin community. So like enormous thank you to everyone, especially FOMO and Jeff, who's just been an enormous help at getting everything we need on the ground there and moving. Oh yeah, it's gonna be the 6th and 7th of October. We're doing it at Holtzmark 25, which is a really amazing space close to like downtown Berlin. I don't know like neighborhoods enough to be able to tell you like where it is, but it's a really cool, pretty space. Yeah, and we're gonna be talking about one of the kind of, I think it's definitely open source. I think it is a free software project. I don't know enough about exactly how those classifications work, but Nix, which is a specifically like the Nix Bitcoin project, which is this project to make the ability to build software. So kind of on that like what makes software free, like your ability to build it, right? I think Nix is a really amazing tool for like democratizing building software in a way that's easy for almost anyone. Like it takes the difficulty in how you deploy software, so running it for yourself, building it, and then running it for yourself in a like reproducible way. It's this amazing, incredible tool that Bitcoiners, of course, knew about for like over half a decade now. There's been this Nix Bitcoin project. It's been around for longer than I've been in Bitcoin. It's like, and it's all the like, you know, people I think of as like the most hardcore, smartest devs working in Bitcoin, like the ones in the deep, dark shadows. You like never get on podcasts and they never go to conferences, and you like really never hear from them except on the mailing list once every 5 years. But these guys have been into Nix and Bitcoin for a long time, and so I think it's like a really incredible tool and project and like way of building and like building your software and shipping it and making it really and truly available to people in ways where they can like they can get it working on their machine to a point where they can change it and run it really easily and quickly. So like I really think of Nix as this amazing self-sovereign piece of software, which is really revolutionizing the open source ecosystem and how we're able to massively onboard people to both running it themselves and like building, like changing it for themselves. So actually editing source code. And so I'm making this next Bitcoin Plus Plus conference, which is like this international, it's a dev comp for Bitcoiners that I started last year. This is actually our 4th conference in like a little over a year. 3rd country. Yeah.
Hardcore.
Yeah. It's anyways, but like we're doing this one on I always have a theme. This one's theme is Nix Bitcoin, and I'm so excited about it. It's gonna be just like a really amazing group of Bitcoiners and they're all talking about how they're using Nix to make their software more accessible, more easy to deploy, more repeatable, which are all like amazing, cool things that we want for like all software, but especially Bitcoin software.
Okay. I'm not going to ask if Calle is going to be there. He might or he might not be.
Well, I am going to be there, and I'm very much looking forward to it, especially because I want to learn as much as possible about Nix and make use of it in my life. And I want to mention also as a satellite event to the Bitcoin Plus Plus conference, we're going to do an Ecash hack day on the day after the conference. So if anyone wants to come and go there, we're going to be Fedimint devs and Cashu devs giving a couple of talks, and then we're going to have a full day of hacking with Ecash and Bitcoin, where you're happily invited to come as well.
Thank you. So how can people follow you on whatever, X or Nostr or any other platform where you might express opinions or post content?
Well, you can find me on Twitter, so it's Calle BTC, Calle BTC, and there you find my NPub and can find me on Nostr.
I'm also on Twitter. I'm NiftyNai, NIFTYNEI. Yeah, but you can follow Bitcoin Plus Plus at BTC Plus Plus, like spelled out.
And check out cashew.space.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, Vlad.
Thank you for listening. Make sure you subscribe, leave a comment, and like this episode.